mobilizing popular opinion against IBB, and it led eventually to his leaving office. Now it looks like the CD seem to have run out of steam. What has happened?
Well, we played some role, but we wouldn't go as far as to say that we were responsible, or we did what we could. What has happened now is that this new regime is the most brutal, fascistic regime you can even think of. They kill people on the street without compunction, so it's difficult to get people to come out in peaceful protest. Before you say Jack Robinson, you see 10 people gathering together, they throw a lot of tear gas and kill one or two of them. Also, they seize leaflets. And as you know, Abiola has been locked up. A lot of people have been locked up, and they've ousted the jurisdiction of the courts. And so this is a very, very new scenario, and they do not pretend they have anything to do with human rights. This is a clear, brutal regime that's prepared to stab people down. And so we have to rethink our, well, maybe not so much our strategy, but our tactics. Because we cannot call people out for protest when we're sure they're going to be brutally killed. But mobilizing people, working, and we will still do our best.
Some have accused some of the CD members and Nadeko and other progressives of having been compromised by this regime.
Well, some might have been compromised, but CD is an umbrella organization, made up of a lot of organizations. And, it's difficult to compromise by its makeup. You have to take joint decisions, and what the decisions are taking is not up to one or two people to get around it. But with the lull in the country, all kinds of reasons fly around, and that you cannot help. What we usually tell them is that if they have a better suggestion, we will certainly try it.
Yes, but the present signs, judging from what you've said, the present signs, the brutalization and everything, shows that the regime is here to stay, to begin with. Then secondly, judging by the number of progressives that have joined the administration, including people like respected members of the CD like Onogorua, progressives like Jack Conde, what happened? How was the regime at inception able to convince all these stalwarts in the organization to join with it?
Well, I'll take your second question first. You know that when Babangida left and Shinako came, it still took a lot of demonstrating and all kinds of things to try and move Shinako. And I think Abiola probably believed that this regime was coming to reinstate him. And since even before then, he was not too comfortable with the stand and methods of CD. He did not help quite a lot. And that sort of dampened what CD could do. This also explains why some people who were pro-Abiola joined the government to start with. But also at that time, you must remember that Abiola's strategy was to go around speaking to people, going to the north, talking to emirs, going to Nzeribe, and that put a lot of people off. And people thought he wasn't really prepared for any battle. And people had started maybe thinking beyond Abiola, until he now showed he was prepared to now do something positive, no matter what the risk was. Then that was how the whole thing gathered momentum again. About this government being here to stay. Well, Babangida also was here to stay, but eventually he had to go. Especially when people realized that what had been, you may say, forecast, that he wasn't willing to go, was now becoming more and more obvious as every day went past. I think Nigerians are now wiser. They no longer rejoice when you have a military government. We are also sure this government wants to stay, but there's no way they can do it. Things have changed. Something is bound to happen. I may not be a prophet to be able to tell you what, but I know that people are so disgruntled, they're not prepared to accept this government. And it's only prepared to limp along just because of these tactics that have never been employed. Even during the colonial era, you just don't have people just killing people on the street like flies. You know.
In the present circumstance, to somebody who is an outsider, who doesn't live here, how would you describe the present Nigerian political situation?
Well, I think people are seething. They are a bit frustrated on what can we do about this. Everything is going downhill, not making any progress. They're also looking for some, you might say, leadership or example or some directives. And I think at the proper time, people will respond.
You think there's a leadership vacuum?
Well, there may seem to be, because the so-called leaders have not perfected exactly how they're going to combat this government.
You're saying, therefore, that with the disarray as it seemed, and Abacha seeming to be in control, I can't see from what you're saying hope for democracy in this generation, in this century.
Well, I wouldn't call it a disarray. I mean, it's just as if an armed robber enters your house. Maybe the first time, after some time, you're able to reject him. If his brother now comes, maybe he knew how you ejected his brother beforehand, and now he now comes with more guns, he messes people around. I mean, until you're sure how to tackle him again, you just don't start using the same methods. Especially if you tried it and he killed a few people around. Well, the leaders are still there, so I wouldn't say there's a leadership vacuum. But you have to choose your time, you have to choose your methods, and you don't play into your opponent's hands.
You're saying, therefore, that the CD is re-strategizing.
Yes, we're mobilizing.
Did you foresee the Abacha and his regime that you see today? Did you foresee him a year ago?
We didn't think it was. We did not. It was not impossible. Because one of the major objectives of CD is to get rid of the military for all time. And that for all time has a significance, because they have this history of going and then coming back to say they're coming to save us from the problems that they created in the first place. Because the whole point, the bottom line really is that the military has no business in politics. That is, and whatever it takes to make that stick, we will have to give it. You may even have another military now to oust Abacha. Some people may feel a bit relieved, but it's a danger, because they will now come again and start doing exactly the same thing and saying that, well, they now want to lay another solid foundation for democracy. So no matter how bad it is, the whole idea is to stop the military for all time, no matter how bad the politicians might be.
This present drift has affected virtually all aspects of the country's economy, culture, people's perception of themselves, the image of the country outside here. Now, the West African economy is linked to the Nigerian economy. How do you see what is going on affecting the economy and beyond?
Well, you see, there is no doubt that Nigeria, with a population of about 100 million, even with that size, whether they are poor or rich, they do affect what goes on in the sub-region. But the danger really is that if at the end of the day you now start to have some hostilities and people start to now have refugees. I mean, Benin Republic is only about maybe 2 million or so, or maybe less. And can you imagine a great percentage of 100 million people just being refugees in countries that can hardly sustain themselves? I mean, on that alone, you can see it's going to be a major disaster. And it is a possibility, because what this government has been playing at, what Babangida played at, was to play one ethnic group against another one. And things are now focusing. You can even see from this their useless conference they are having. That things are being decided on where you come from. And it doesn't matter what the other person thinks, you're not prepared to see it his own way. So one can also see that possibility ahead, while in the meantime we're trying to be optimistic and trying to find ways that things will not get that bad. Well, we'll see, but whatever it takes, we definitely will have to remove the military from our polity.
You are in the medical profession and have been closely associated with education over time. The present regime definitely has affected your profession.
Well, there's no doubt about that. There are hardly any teaching. All the teaching hospitals are closed by one strike or the other. The whole country is full of fake drugs. So even when you are practicing medicine, you can hardly be sure of what you are doing. People can hardly afford even the medicine or the cost of treatment. So you have that problem. And
Can you comment?
well, all the teaching hospitals are closed. Even when they open temporarily, within another few weeks, you have strikes because salaries are not being paid. Usually they don't have stock of drugs. And even the state hospitals, as opposed to the teaching hospitals, which are also public hospitals, many of them are closed. But what makes matters worse is that there is no control over drugs. So most of the drugs in the country are fake drugs. So when you are treating patients, you're not quite sure what result to expect. And with the shortage of foreign exchange, the government is not refurbishing hospitals or doing much about it. So that when you have epidemics or whatever, you just fold your hand. It's not because you don't want to do anything, but just because the present political climate is just, things are just drifting, nothing is happening.
Okay. What future do you see for Abacha, for his regime and for the country?
Well, for Abacha will not last. His regime will not last. For the country, things are a bit hazy. There's a very great possibility the country may break to pieces the way they're going. If they keep on going the way they're going, that Saleh just comes up, does what he likes, damns the consequences. The law courts make orders, they ignore it. In some parts of the country, you used to have very efficient, free and secondary education, and even university education. Now it's totally all in shatters, and people may just want to mind their own business themselves and not want to associate with other ethnic groups. And that's the pessimistic way it may eventually go. But if we are lucky, we can get our acts together. As before, the country has a lot of human resources. very well educated. We have a lot of mineral resources that are being plundered by these useless people every day. So we're between those two extremes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes.